I was the one who paid for the flowers. Every arrangement in that ballroom, the tall white lilies on the head table, the cascading roses along the aisle, the small spray bouquets tucked into the pew ends of the church. I had chosen them myself, sitting across from a florist named Diane in a little shop on Maple Street, pointing at pictures in a binder while my daughter scrolled her phone beside me. I'd written the check without hesitating, $4,100. Because that's what you do when your only daughter is getting married and she hands you a number and says, "Mom, we're a little stretched." I gave her the honeymoon too. Not all of it, just enough for the flights. So when I heard her in the bridal suite that morning, her voice low and sharp the way it gets when she thinks she's being practical, telling my new son-in-law's mother, she means well, but she tends to hover. Just smile and redirect her. I want you to understand that I was standing on the other side of a half-open door, holding a steamer I'd brought from home because the hotel's wasn't working. I didn't drop the steamer. I didn't make a sound. I finished pressing the hem of her veil, hung it carefully on the hook by the window, and said I was going to check on my seat assignment. She kissed my cheek the way you kiss an envelope before mailing it, quick and automatic. My seat was at table 9. My daughter was at table 1, in the center of the room, surrounded by her husband's family and their college friends, and people I didn't recognize. I had been placed near the exit, next to a cousin of Marcus's who spent the entire reception staring at his phone, and a woman named Terry who asked me twice if I was with the catering staff. I ate the salmon. I drank 1 glass of wine. When my daughter and her husband had their first dance, I watched from across the room and clapped with everyone else. When Marcus's father gave his toast, he named every person in Marcus's family by name. He made a joke about the years it took to find a woman good enough for his son, and the room laughed warmly. My daughter gave a toast to her husband. She talked about the first time they met, the way he made her feel seen. She thanked his parents for raising the man she loved. She thanked her maid of honor, her college roommate, her favorite yoga instructor. She did not say my name. I waited, the way you wait when you know something is coming and you're trying to give it every possible chance to arrive. I held my wine glass and I waited. The applause rose. The music started again. My name did not come. I stayed until the cake was cut. I helped stack the gift bags near the door because no one else was doing it. I hugged my daughter and told her she was beautiful, which she was. She said, "Thanks, Mom. I'll call you when we're back from Cancun." Marcus shook my hand the way men do when they've never really seen you. I drove home in the dark on the highway, both hands on the wheel, the radio off. The house was quiet in the way it gets when you return to it alone after something big. I sat at the kitchen table in my dress and my good shoes, and I looked at the centerpiece I'd kept one of the lily arrangements from the church. The florist had let me take it, and I thought about what I was feeling. I tried to name it. It wasn't sadness. I'd been sad before. I knew that shape. It was clarity, cold and still as a glass of water left on a counter overnight. I didn't sleep much. In the morning, I made coffee and found the folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. I keep all my important papers there, insurance documents, the title to the car, my husband Gerald's death certificate, and the copy of my will that the attorney's office had prepared 4 years ago. I opened it to the beneficiary page. My daughter's name was listed 3 times. I made a note on a yellow pad. Then I called the office of Patricia Hollins, who had handled my estate planning since Gerald died, and left a message with her assistant asking for the earliest available appointment. That was a Tuesday. By Thursday, I was sitting across from Patricia in her office on the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown, the kind of office that smells like old paper and quiet authority. She has silver hair cut close and a habit of folding her hands when she listens. I laid the folder on her desk. "I'd like to review everything," I said, "and I'd like to make changes." She didn't ask me why I was there or whether I was sure. She just opened the folder and began reading. I told her what I wanted. I watched her write notes in the margin without flinching. When I finished, She looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "This is a significant restructure." "Yes," I said. "Do you have anyone else in mind as primary beneficiary?" I had been thinking about that since Tuesday morning. Gerald and I had given quietly to a literacy organization for nearly 20 years. We'd never told our daughter. It had never seemed relevant. Now it did. "The Riverside Literacy Foundation," I said. "They run after-school programs. Gerald used to drive the book van on Fridays." Patricia made a note. "And the house? The house goes into a trust. My name only. When I'm gone, sell it. Everything goes to the foundation." She nodded once, unhurried. "I'll draft the revised documents. Plan for 2 weeks." I thanked her and left. On the sidewalk outside, the morning was gray and damp, and I stood for a moment letting the cold air settle into my coat. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something more like weight returning to my spine after a long time of leaning. I drove to the bank on the way home. My daughter had been on my checking account since Gerald's hospitalization, when the doctors were uncertain, and I'd needed someone who could sign things quickly. That was 3 years ago. The uncertainty had passed. The access had not. The branch manager was a calm woman named Renee, professional in a way I appreciated. She pulled up my account and confirmed the authorized user. Then I asked her to remove the access, reissue the debit card in my name only, change the online credentials, and add an alert for any transaction over $200. "Would you like to do that today?" she asked. "I'd like to do it right now," I said. While she typed, I looked at the small succulent on the corner of her desk. Someone had tied a ribbon around the pot. I wondered if it was a gift or if she'd bought it herself. Some people buy themselves flowers and don't explain it to anyone. I had started doing that again recently. When I left the bank, the gray had thinned a little and there was light coming through. Not warm, not dramatic, just light. That evening, my daughter called from Cancun. She sounded happy and slightly sunburned through the phone. She asked if the flowers from the church had wilted yet. I told her they were holding up. She said Marcus's family had been wonderful, that his mother had already invited us. She paused slightly on the U as to their lake house in July. "That sounds nice," I said. She asked if I was all right. She said I sounded quiet. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About some things I've been putting off." She laughed a little and said she understood, that she always felt reflective after big events, and that we should get lunch when she was back. I said, "Of course." I hung up and sat with the phone in my lap. I thought about what it means to be thought of as background, to be the woman in the back of the room, the one who pressed the veil, the one who wrote the checks, who drove through 3 different flower shops to find exactly the right shade of cream rose because my daughter had been specific, the one whose name didn't make it into the toast. I had been making myself smaller for a long time. I had thought it was love. I was beginning to understand it was habit. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Peggy. We have been neighbors for 11 years, and friends in the way you become friends when you're both widows who share a fence line and an understanding that sometimes you just need someone to sit with. She came over in 20 minutes with a blueberry coffee cake she'd made the day before and didn't ask me anything until I'd had a full cup of coffee. Then I told her about the toast. Peggy didn't say maybe she forgot or I'm sure she meant to. She just said, "How are you sitting with it?" That's the thing I love about Peggy. She asks the right questions. "I'm angry," I said, "and I'm embarrassed that I'm not more surprised." "You're not embarrassed," she said. "You're grieving." I thought about that for a long time after she went home. My daughter and Marcus returned from their honeymoon on a Saturday. She texted me a photo from the airport, her wearing a sundress, leaning against him, tan and glowing. I sent a heart. I didn't call. She came by that Wednesday for what she called a quick catch-up. She brought pastries from the bakery downtown and set them on my kitchen table like an offering. She was cheerful in the way she gets when she doesn't want to discuss something. I poured tea. We talked about the honeymoon, The hotel, the food. She showed me pictures on her phone. I asked the right questions. Then she paused, and I recognized the pause. It was the pause before she needed something. Marcus and I have been talking, she said, about the property situation. What property situation? I asked, though I already knew the shape of it. Just long-term, Mom. We want to be practical. We talked to someone about estate planning, and they said it's smart to have conversations early. About the house, about your accounts, just so everyone knows where things stand. I looked at my daughter. I had her father's eyes in a different face, a face I'd watched change from round and trusting to something sharper and more careful. I had loved her at every stage. I still loved her. That wasn't the question. I've already had that conversation, I said. With my attorney. She blinked. Oh, when? Last week. And? She smiled carefully. And I made some adjustments, I said. I think everything is in good order now. The smile stayed on her face but shifted slightly, the way a picture shifts on a wall in the quiet after a door closes. What kind of adjustments? The kind that are mine to make? I said gently. More tea? She didn't stay long after that. When she hugged me at the door, the hug was the same as the wedding kiss. Quick, automatic. I stood on the porch and watched her car pull away, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The absolute solidity of my own floor, under my own feet. The following week, I went back to Patricia's office and signed the revised documents. The trust was created. The will was updated. She notarized everything neatly and handed me a copy in a slim navy folder. You're the sole decision maker of your estate, she said. Completely, I placed the folder in my bag. That's all I needed to hear. On the walk back to my car, I stopped at the pharmacy for aspirin, and then, on a small impulse, went into the used bookstore next door. I hadn't been in years. The man behind the counter had a beard and reading glasses pushed up on his head, and he nodded at me like I was already a regular. I bought 3 paperbacks and a small book of Mary Oliver poems that had someone else's name written in pencil on the inside cover. I didn't mind. Someone had loved it before me. At home, I made soup. I ate it at the kitchen table while reading, and the house was quiet in a way that felt different from the old quiet. The old quiet had been about waiting. This quiet was about presence. My daughter called on a Thursday evening, 2 weeks after my attorney visit. Her voice was different this time, tighter. She'd found out about the account changes. I wasn't sure how. She asked me, very carefully, if I was all right. If someone had influenced me, if I was, and here she chose the word delicately, acting out of emotion. I let her finish. Then I said, I'm acting out of clarity. Those are different things. She said she didn't understand what was happening. She said I was her mother. She said the house was something we'd discussed, something she'd always understood to be part of her future. When did we discuss it? I asked. Silence. When did we sit down and have that conversation? I asked again, not unkindly. She said she'd assumed. That she thought I knew what she meant. I assumed things too, I said. I assumed my name would be in your toast. The silence this time was different, longer and more still. Mom, I'm not angry, Claire. And I meant it. I'm just not available in the way I used to be. Not for assumptions. She said she needed to think. I said that sounded right. We said goodnight, like 2 people standing on opposite sides of a very clean window. I didn't sleep poorly. I sat in the chair by the lamp in the living room and read 40 pages of my library book. I made chamomile tea. I looked at the framed photo on the side table. Gerald and me on the back porch in 1999. The summer, we refinished the deck ourselves, both of us covered in wood stain and laughing at something the camera didn't catch. She'll be all right, I told him. And so will I. 3 weeks passed. My daughter texted periodically. Short messages, careful and slightly formal, the way people text when they're not sure where they stand. I responded warmly and briefly. I had learned that brevity was not the same as coldness. It was just respect for the space between us. It was Lily who changed things. Lily is my granddaughter. Though not in the direct way, she's the daughter of my late husband Gerald's niece, a girl I've known since she was in a car seat, who calls me Grandma Dorothy the way children call anyone grandma who feeds them regularly and remembers their birthdays. She's 17 now, tall, with Gerald's stubborn jaw, and a habit of saying exactly what she's thinking, exactly when she thinks it. She texted me on a Tuesday night. "Grandma D, are you okay? Mom said something happened with Aunt Claire at the wedding, and Aunt Claire said you were being difficult, and I said I didn't believe that for 1 second. I smiled at my phone for a long moment. Then I wrote back, 'Come by Saturday. I'll make the good biscuits.' She arrived at 10 in the morning on her bicycle, her hair in a ponytail, wearing a jacket with a tear on one elbow she'd repaired herself with iron-on patches shaped like stars. She brought a carton of orange juice because she said she wasn't coming empty-handed, and OJ was the only thing in her budget. We sat at the kitchen table. I made biscuits, and we ate them with butter and honey, and she didn't ask me anything careful or diplomatic. She just said, 'Tell me what happened.' So I told her, not everything, not the legal details, but the toast, the seating, the words through the half-open door, the steamer I'd held in my hands while the words hit me. Lily listened without interrupting. When I finished, she put her biscuit down and looked at me with an expression that reminded me so much of Gerald that I had to look at the window for a second. "She left you out of her toast after you paid for everything?" "She did." "And seated you by the exit?" "Table 9. Grandma Dorothy," Lily said, and her voice was 17 and ancient at the same time. "That's not okay." I hadn't needed anyone to say that, but it helped to hear it said so plainly, without apology and without the trembling qualification that most people wrap around hard truths. "No," I said. "It wasn't." She helped me wash the dishes after. She stayed until afternoon, and we didn't talk about Claire the whole time. We talked about her junior year, her plan to apply to a design program, a boy in her class who'd said her star patch jacket was trying too hard, and how she'd told him that trying was the whole point. I laughed so hard at that I had to sit down. When she left, she stopped at the door and turned back. "Can I keep coming by?" "You don't have to ask that," I said. "I know," she said. "I just want to." October brought cooler weather and a letter from Patricia confirming that all the trust documents had been filed. I framed nothing. I celebrated nothing. I made a pot of soup and watched the rain come in off the street and felt the deep, bone-level satisfaction of a woman who has finally organized her own life according to her own terms. My daughter came by unannounced on a Thursday afternoon. I saw her car from the kitchen window. I opened the door before she could knock. She was dressed well, always is, but her face was tired in a way her clothes couldn't fix. She stood on the porch holding a bag from the Italian bakery downtown, the one we used to go to when she was in high school, the one with the almond cookies Gerald loved. "Can I come in?" she asked. Really asked this time, not stepping past me. I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table. She put the bakery bag between us. She didn't open it immediately. She twisted the paper handles in her hands. "Marcus says I should let this go," she began. "And what do you think?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think he doesn't know what he's talking about." She almost smiled. Then, "I've been trying to figure out when things changed between us, between you and me. And I keep going back to the same place, and it's not a comfortable place to be." "What place is that?" "The place where I realize how much I've taken for granted." She didn't dress it up. She just said it directly, and I let it sit. "I didn't mean to leave you out of the toast," she said. "I wrote it ahead of time, and I was so nervous, and I kept editing it, and when I got up there I was shaking, and I said what I had memorized, and I didn't. She stopped. That's an explanation. Not an excuse. I know the difference, I said. The seating, I left that to Marcus's mother. She looked at her hands. I should have looked at it. I didn't, and I should have looked at a lot of things I didn't look at. She paused. I heard you tell Lily you were making changes to your estate. Lily didn't tell me that. No. I figured it out. She looked at me. I'm not here about the money, Mom. And here is the thing about knowing your child for their entire life, when they're telling the truth. Not always, but in moments like this one, when the room is quiet and the bakery bag is between you and they're not looking anywhere but at your face, Then what are you here about? I asked. I'm here because I don't want to be the kind of person who only shows up when something is at stake. Her voice was careful, but not rehearsed. I've been thinking about what I'm like when things are comfortable, and I don't love what I see. She reached across the table, didn't take my hand, just rested her fingers near mine. I'm sorry about the toast. I'm sorry about the seating. I'm sorry I called you difficult instead of calling you first. I looked at my daughter. This woman I had raised in this house, who had eaten breakfast at this table and cried over boys at this table and told me she was engaged at this table, crying again, but differently. I didn't rush to forgive her. Real apologies don't need rushing. They need room. Thank you for coming, I said, and thank you for saying it plainly. She opened the bakery bag. Almond cookies, the small ones with powdered sugar. She set them on a plate between us. I want to do better, she said. If you'll let me. I want that too, I said. But I want it to be real. Not for the estate. Not for table assignments, or holidays, or whatever else is convenient. Real. Real. She repeated, like she was agreeing to something with weight. We ate the cookies. We talked. Not about legal documents or account access or anything practical. We talked about her father, which we hadn't done in a long time. She told me she still sometimes picked up her phone to call him before she remembered. I told her I still turned toward his side of the bed on cold mornings. She cried a little. I didn't. When she left, she hugged me in the doorway, and this time it was different. The kind of hug that comes from something other than habit. I stood in the kitchen after her car disappeared, and I didn't know exactly what we were, not repaired, not finished, somewhere in the honest middle of things, and I thought that the honest middle was the only place worth being. November came. I started volunteering Tuesday mornings at the Riverside Literacy Foundation, the one from Gerald's book van days. They put me with the after-school group, 7- and 8-year-olds who sat at low tables and sounded out words with their fingers pressed flat against the page. There was a boy named Marco who couldn't get through a sentence without stopping to look at me and check if I was still listening. I always was. My daughter called every Sunday. Not to discuss anything in particular. Sometimes we talked for 30 minutes. Sometimes 10. She asked once what I was reading. I told her about the Mary Oliver book, the one with the other woman's name in it, and she ordered her own copy that same week. Small things. True things. Lily came by on the second Saturday of every month without fail, usually with something she'd made or found a newspaper clipping about a design competition. Once a tiny cactus in a terracotta pot she'd painted herself. She would eat whatever I'd baked, tell me about her week with the same wonderful lack of filter, and leave me feeling something I can only describe as witnessed. One afternoon in December, she was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while I made bread, and she said, without looking up, "Do you think you and Aunt Claire will be okay? I think we're finding our way." I said, "She talks about you differently now." She turned a page. "Like you're a real person." I laughed at that, genuinely, from somewhere unguarded. "That's a good sign," I said. Lily looked up, grinning. I told her the toast thing was messed up, by the way, back in September. She said she knew. She told me that too. Good. She went back to her homework. People should say the hard stuff out loud. Otherwise, it just sits there and gets heavier. I turned back to the bread. I thought about all the years of unspoken things, the invitations I hadn't questioned, the tables I'd accepted without asking why, the times I'd driven home with explanations folded in my pockets like old grocery lists, smoothed, flat, and stored, never opened again. "You're right," I said. "I usually am," she said cheerfully, and I threw a dish towel at her. At Christmas, my daughter and Marcus came to my house for the first time in 3 years. Usually, we went to his parents' place, a big white house an hour north where the celebrations were loud and structured, and I always felt like a visiting dignitary from a smaller country. This year, my daughter called in October and said, "Can we come to you?" Marcus's family is doing their own thing this year, and honestly, I just want a real Christmas. I made the good ham and the potato gratin Gerald always requested, and the cranberry cake with the orange glaze that I hadn't made since he died, because it made me miss him too much. Missing him was not the same as losing him again, and that the cake was just a cake. We ate at the table by the window. Marcus was quieter than I expected, thoughtful, careful in a way he hadn't been at the wedding. He asked about Gerald. He asked how I'd managed the house on my own all these years. He asked what I was reading. He listened to the answers. After dinner, my daughter helped me with the dishes. We stood at the sink the way we hadn't stood together in years, passing plates, not saying very much, the kitchen warm around us. She said, "Lily told me what you said, about the honest middle." "When did Lily tell you that?" "Last week." She smiled at the plate in her hands. "She tells me a lot of things now, about how to be better." "She learned that from somewhere," I said. "She learned it from you." I handed her the last dish. The window above the sink was dark now, and our reflections were faint in it, 2 women standing close together, the lights of the kitchen making us soft around the edges. "I love you, Mom," she said. Not at the end of a phone call, not at the door on the way out, just right there at the sink, with dish soap on her hands and nothing to gain from saying it. "I love you too," I said. January. The new year came in cold and clear. I was awake for it, not by choice, but because that's what happens when you're past 60 and your body has its own calendar. I sat by the window in the dark with a cup of tea and watched the street at midnight. Empty, except for a few porch lights and the soft fall of snow that hadn't been in the forecast. I thought about the woman I had been the morning after the wedding, sitting in my good dress with the lily arrangement on the table, writing notes on a yellow pad. Not in anger, in that cold, clear clarity that comes when something finally breaks through. I thought about Patricia's office. The navy folder, the trust documents, the bank, Renee typing quietly, the small succulent with its ribbon. I thought about Lily on her bicycle with the star-patch jacket. I thought about my daughter's hands in the dishwater. "I love you, Mom." The snow outside. I hadn't been asking to be seen. Not anymore. I had been learning to see myself clearly, without apology, without the long habit of making myself the footnote in someone else's story. I was the main story. I had always been the main story. It had just taken me 68 years and a wedding toast and a half-open door to understand that. I poured a second cup of tea. The snow kept falling. In the spring, I planted a small garden in the strip of yard along the fence herbs mostly, a few tomato plants, some marigolds, because Gerald always said marigolds were the most honest flower. They don't pretend to be anything else. Lily came by in April to help turn the soil. She wore old jeans and gardening gloves she'd bought from the dollar bin at the hardware store. We worked side by side in the late afternoon light, not talking much, just the good quiet of 2 people doing something with their hands. At one point, she sat back on her heels and looked at the little plot of turned earth. "It's going to be something," she said. "It already is," I said. She smiled at the dirt. "Very philosophical for a Tuesday afternoon." "That's what I'm here for," I said. She laughed. I laughed. The marigolds had not yet bloomed, but the soil was ready, and the light was long and warm, and mine, that was enough. More than enough. That was everything.